It is October 30th of 2020 at 7:30 in the morning. I am recording this video to catalog my experience of researching paranormal creatures. I will be reading 3 pieces of works to get a better understanding of these creatures. The first book that I will be reading is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This will hopefully enlighten my research into vampires and possibly give me some ideas on how to take them down should I run into any. I will also be reading The Year of the Witching, which will give me some research baseline into witches and how they get their powers and all of that. And then I will also be reading Mexican Gothic, which is about a haunted house. So hopefully I will be able to get into the mindset of a ghost, understand where they come from, why they follow us around, why they stick around, and how they can affect humans so that I can better prepare myself. I wanted to record this experience so for my research later on, so I have some clips of me and my live reaction to these events. So I am going to be reading these books and updating this research log of my thoughts and my opinions as I'm reading them. Day 1 of research, and I am starting the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. It is still October the 30th, and it is 10:08 in the morning. Add to the record that my cat has been acting very odd, very distracted at the back door, kind of creeping along, watching something out the window that I cannot see. It is still October 30th of 2020. It is roughly 1 o'clock, and I am halfway through the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So let me pull up my notes so that I can discuss the things that I have read so far. So this has provided some pretty interesting lore into vampires. In this particular book, there is a lot of similar lore to other vampire stories. Seemingly dead appearance and then a very healthy appearance, a dislike of sunlight, the whole once you've been invited in scenario. There are some various changes that I'm seeing as well, but you can kind of see that all through vampire lore of the media, the piece of media that you're reading, changing depending on the narrative that the author is attempting to push. In this particular narrative, we are dealing with a vampire that targets children, and it's gross. On a more personal note, this is a horror book. It is horrifying, it's creepy, it's gross, it's horror in every sense of the word, and I am enthralled. I think that the commentary that Grady Hendrix has made about several hot button important topics right now is great. He is... Hello? Anyways, he is exploring the idea of safety and kind of the safety that upper, more wealthy people have versus poor people. So we're seeing the dichotomy of the rich neighborhood who doesn't really get off their asses, pardon my language, to make a difference until it starts affecting their own children, and they keep talking about losing this sense of safety that they had before, and it's not like the old days. And then we're seeing the poorer neighborhoods where they kind of are just getting brushed aside as these incidents don't get reported. They're common, like we've come to expect it. And there's no sense of like genuine safety or anything like that, where people feel like they can leave their windows open, they can leave their doors unlocked. You just don't get that same safety from the poor neighborhood as you do from the rich neighborhood. There's comments into police response time. So there's a heavy emphasis on police response time in the upper class neighborhood. They keep mentioning like it takes them 3 minutes to respond to a call. And then in the poorer neighborhood, essentially all of the action has happened before the police even show up, and the residents are kind of just like, well, they have this mentality of like, we're on our own, and we're on our own, and we just kind of have to fend for ourselves. So like I said, I am halfway through this book. I will continue reading it, and I'll update my log when I have finished with my final thoughts and the pieces of research that I gleaned from the book. On an even more personal note, things are going weirdly. I'm noticing very strange noises, and my cat is acting very weirdly, and I feel as if I am being watched, and I don't know what's going on. But I'm just going to continue doing my research and reading, and I will update the log when I have finished and give my thoughts that I can review later and put into a more comprehensive statement, I guess. Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to reading. It is about 4 o'clock on October 30th, and I have finished A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. As far as research for research purposes, this was not the best book. This didn't really give any insight into vampires. Admittedly, the main villain of this is a vampire, and he's exceedingly boring. As I spoke of earlier, he follows the patterns of kind of like being adverse to sunlight, but he could still go in sunlight. This just didn't follow a clear, like, concise or interesting plot. If you took away a lot of like the more horrific scenes, there are 2 or 3 in particular that I can think of, this just wasn't very good. There were a lot of social issues that I felt like the author brought into this that he didn't really have any room to speak on. He is neither a woman or a person of color, which is the majority of like the satire or commentary that I found in this book. Speaking on people of color's experience, obviously I can't say, but him being a man trying to speak on the ways that women are oppressed, have been and are oppressed, just didn't come across very well. And yeah, overall it just was very boring. And like I said, if you were to take out the more horrifying scenes, you probably would not have a very good book. The last point that I want to speak up against this book, as far as research, in addition to just being a piece of literature, the vampire's mode of bloodsucking is essentially by performing oral sex, but against the victim's will, so basically raping the victim. The author deemed it appropriate for some unknown reason to say that the victims actually derived pleasure from this act of rape, but 90% of the victims of this vampire were children, which doesn't do much for me enjoyment-wise, research-wise. Nothing about this book was good in the long term. There were definitely scenes involving cockroaches and rats and things like that that are disturbing and like written very well. As far as like actual vampires or plot or anything, all of the women main characters were like carbon copies of each other and just not good. So unfortunately, I don't think that this fits what I needed for delving into vampires as paranormal creatures. So I think next I'm going to read The Year of the Witching, which is about a young witch in a puritanical town that is very afraid of her. I'm hoping this will shed some light on witches, how they came to be, if, you know, when they're still around, the treatment of them, and kind of the history that they have with humans. I think it'll be an interesting study and give me some insight into witches themselves. So I'm gonna jump into that, and I will update the log when I have some more definitive thoughts and think that this might help me in my research. Is the camera picking this up? What? What the hell is that? It is October 30th, around 10:30 at night, and I am 45% of the way through The Year of the Witching. I think that this is going to really help me in my research about witches. It is fantastically written. This follows a young witch who is half outsider, half part of this cult, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. It seems to be some sort of like puritanical village with a prophet who has lots of wives, and they follow strict rules. And the main character, her mom was a witch, and her mom was killed because she was married to the prophet and cheated, I guess. And then she went into the Darkwood, which is like this magical place that is supposed to have been the land of Lilith, or of, they call her the mother, but she's like basically the devil. And our main character is very drawn to the Darkwood, and I'm getting a lot of information about witches. I think that the kind of descriptions that are going on about the rituals and things like that are very interesting. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's going to do a lot for me, just information-wise. I'm still not very far into the year of the witching, but I am so thirsty and sleepy that I think I'm gonna make myself some coffee. It is October 31st of 2020, around 11 o'clock in the morning, and I have finished the year of the witching. For research purposes, I think that this is a pretty decently written book. I think I would have liked more emphasis on and building on the witches and the backstory of the witches, and I would have liked a little bit more grit. It felt very young, and I think that the characters were not as fleshed out as I would have liked them to be to properly study them. That being said, the ending was fantastic. It pulled in a lot of supernatural elements that we were kind of lacking throughout the story, and I thought it was decently done. On a personal note, I fell asleep last night because I was so thirsty and nothing could quench my thirst, and the coffee was not keeping me awake. And so this morning I ordered delivery coffee, and my DoorDash person was acting very strange, and they handed me my drink and like just stood there and waited for me to close my door. But I have my drink now, but this isn't coffee. What? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's this is not happening. This is not happening. I need to just continue with my mission. I don't know what's going on, but a lot of weird stuff's going on, and it must mean that I'm close to something right. So I'm gonna continue my research, and I will update the log when I have something. And so my research concludes there with the end of Mexican Gothic, which is the story of a young girl who gets called away to attend to her ailing sister at a mysterious house. This was supposed to aid me in my research into ghosts. It probably didn't do a whole lot of that just due to its ambiguity and kind of odd plot points. But it did entertain me, and it got me thinking about the longevity, the immortality of creatures. And so I had to ask myself, what did this research teach me? What did I get from reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which admittedly failed? What did I get from the Year of the Witching, which, while it held very little insight into witches, was thoroughly entertaining? And what did I get from Mexican Gothic, which had a lot of twists and turns and maybe some mystical, magical elements to it. I would say what I gained from this research, what I learned, what I've gleaned from this experience is really quite simple, that humans should mind their own business.